We've got a huge week in crypto, and in the macro news, there's some incredibly bullish things going on that I don't know how Jerome Powell looks at these things and says, we're good to lower rates now, but who knows what's going to happen there. And the big question on a lot of people's minds, are we in alt season? Did we just kick off alt season? And should I rotate my Bitcoin into Ethereum and down and up the risk curve, I should say? That's the question on a lot of people's minds. And I have a different take on all of this. And so with that, please know that every day in adventure is a crypto. Please join me on my journey. Hit the subscribe button, like, share, do all those things. And remember, I'm certainly not a financial advisor, certainly not yours. So whatever I say is for entertainment value. Take it as such. And please, please put a comment down below if you found any relevance in this whatsoever. Even if you didn't, I'd like to hear from you. And with that, let's just get on talking about Ethereum first. Let's talk about Ethereum where it is right now. Ethereum is pushing up against a very, very, very strong and important level of resistance at around 4,000. So we've had a run up from about 1,400 back in April all the way up to this mark around 4,000. We're at like $38, $39, $100, pushing up against that 4,000 mark. But I will tell you, there's a lot of strong resistance at that mark. You know, you've seen it hit right above there, 4,100. This is around the 4,000, 4,000. It hits a strong level of resistance. Yes, we've been above there before and not too distant past, back in the last bull run. And it's very potential. If you look at if we draw some Fibonacci's market high, last market high to low, we're pushing up against a 786 Fibonacci at about $4,000. Very strong level of resistance. But if we are able to bust through that, there's a lot of potential. Now, the question is, and it will test this. We probably will bounce off this week. It is really a strong test. I personally have some longs that I opened up in this range that I'm holding on to. I'm not changing anything with that. And I'm watching this level of resistance. If it busts through this and holds a candle above that 4,000, we could be in some decent shape for upward movement. But we could also bounce off this ceiling and go down. So a lot of risk there. Let's see what happens. If you look at this and people are asking, should I rotate my Ethereum? Is it time? Well, let's talk about a little bit of the macro news. Typically, the Federal Reserve's Chair, Jerome Powell, for the last couple years, he says we're data dependent. The Fed is data dependent. It's driven by data. Well, the data suggests that we have low inflation, around the target rate, we have decent jobs numbers and all these things. Decent jobs numbers, inflation is low. The data suggests we should drop the rate. But since he dropped the rate 50 basis points right before the election in 2024, back in, I think it was November or might have been October meeting of 2024, he's been saying, well, and then since he's like, look, there's no need to drop the rates again. We're going to see what happens. And then the tariffs hit in, was that April? And then we had market lows down here. Market retracted 30% or so. And the Fed was saying, we're going to look at the tariffs now because we're going to see what happens with the tariffs. We're no longer data dependent. We're going to see what happens with the tariffs. Now, over the weekend, I don't know if you were sleeping, but if you were watching, trade deals were coming through every single day. We got a trade deal with the EU. China's punted, another 60 days or 30 days or something on their trade deal, but working through that. Japan, there's a lot of trade deals that are happening right now. So the tariffs are becoming less and less and less a factor. They're a known entity now. So with that news, I'd be surprised at the very least Powell does not have some strong language about future rate cuts if there isn't a surprise rate cut at all. And I can tell you right now, according to a lot of the models out there, the CME Fed Rate Watch, that's not projected to have a rate cut this week. They're still saying there's a 95% chance, 96, 97% chance that there will be no rate cuts this week. But I'm not sure. There's still, even though the experts are saying no rate cuts, you never know what can happen at the Fed's level or how much. I'd be surprised if there's a rate cut, but at the same respect, I know this is counterintuitive to what I just said. I don't know that it'd be so surprised anymore. Stranger things have happened. And looking at where Bitcoin is, and should I rotate my my Bitcoin into ETH? Well, ETH has outperformed Bitcoin for the last couple weeks, if not months. ETH has outperformed Bitcoin. If you look at the total market cap of crypto, this is the total market cap. We're not getting into Bitcoin dominance just yet. That's next. But our total market cap, I mean, we went down here from about 2.3 trillion to almost 4 trillion. I mean, that is an incredible increase. I mean, look, check this out. We've seen the market pump 71% in total. That's how fast that money can flow into crypto. Now, that's how fast we might see more money flow into crypto with some positive outcomes in the next couple of weeks. And Bitcoin is still dominant, but the dominance is dropping extraordinarily fast. And if you look over time, we've seen this happen. We've seen it run up, the Bitcoin dominance. If you get back into 2024, we had the ETFs come in with the ETFs inflows. I mean, there's like 160, 170 billion dollars in the ETFs total. Most of that is Bitcoin, but Ethereum is gaining importance. And here's the thing. I put Bitcoin and Ethereum in two completely different classes. I put Bitcoin in a completely different class than all of the cryptos. So Bitcoin I look at as an entity like gold. No one controls gold. Well, not entirely true, but you don't have you can, if I want more gold, I can go dig it up. Well, Bitcoin, you can only dig up 21 million of those. So it's a little different in gold because it does have a scarcity effect. There's a finite amount of it. People say, why don't you just, someone else could copy Bitcoin. You could copy Bitcoin, but China can make a Rolex. It's exactly like a Rolex and indistinguishable in every single piece, except that it's not a Rolex. And Rolex commands tens of thousands of dollars, where the fake commands hundreds of dollars because it's not a Rolex. No one else will be a Bitcoin. Every other crypto on the planet that I know of is not Bitcoin. And every other planet, now this is what might upset people, but every other crypto is a company. Even though, Ethereum, it's an open source, it's all these things, but it's still not Bitcoin. And while Ethereum has way more utility, just like Apple has a ton of utility, at some point in the future, Apple will go away. I don't know of a company that stood the test of time. Maybe Apple's the one that bucks the system, but at some point, companies go away. Whether it be, remember, AOL was a huge internet company in the 90s, the late 90s, early 2000s. Where's AOL now? Yahoo, same thing. And, Google has taken over. And what's next? How long does Google last? Maybe you say Google's too big to fail, but at some point, these companies, they lose their ability to a competitor. And someone comes along with a better option. Is that Solana? Is it Sui? Is it Say? I don't know. But right now, Bitcoin I put in a different class. So me personally, I will not sell my Bitcoin and push it down the chain. I just don't feel right about that. I'm going to hold on to that Bitcoin. Maybe when it reaches 800,000 or 1 million at some point in the distant or near future. Don't know, not making predictions on that. But maybe at that point I might sell. But right now I do have a moon bag, and my moon bag consists of Bitcoin. It does have a little of Ethereum, a little XRP, Solana, and that's about it in my moon bag. And those ones, obviously Bitcoin's my biggest allotment of that. It's about 90% of that moon bag. But I have a little bits of those other things just in case they blow up and pop off. And then in which case I have a plan in order to sell them. But for me to sell Bitcoin to buy Ethereum, I just don't believe in that. Now I do own Ethereum, and look, I might have missed out on bigger gains by not doing that sooner. If I had sold my Bitcoin when Bitcoin was around 100,000 and Ethereum was around, 2,000, I would have had a better appreciation had I just bought Bitcoin by about 15 or 20 basis points. Bought Ethereum with my Bitcoin. But I'm in Bitcoin for the long term. So I take my Bitcoin that I own, I stick it over here, and everything else I play with. But I'm just too fearful that something might happen and the other ones go away while Bitcoin just pops in dominance. I do believe short term we are going to see, a falling of this Bitcoin dominance as things rotate into ETH and into other coins, the others. But right now, like I said, my personal strategy, and I'm not telling you to do this, you might miss out on gains. Yes, that's true. But I would feel terrible if I sold my Bitcoin and Ethereum went the other direction, or they found a flaw, or there was a hack, and that happened. Now that could happen to Bitcoin, I guess. I mean, it hasn't happened in the, what is that, 15, 16 years, but I guess that's always possible. But I have stronger beliefs in Bitcoin. Now I do believe short term there's other coins like XRP or Solana that might appreciate really fast. Maybe, who knows? But until then, or not even until then, I'm not selling my Bitcoin for ETH. So should you sell your Bitcoin for ETH? That's up to you. Now, do you think that Ethereum is going to rise faster than Bitcoin? Then you might want to do that. Some other plays you can potentially do is I have a Bitcoin Ethereum bot that uses Bitcoin to buy Ethereum, and then it sells, and as Ethereum goes up, it sells off back into Bitcoin. So I'm just raising my Bitcoin stacks. I have two bots that do that, one through Pionex.us and one through EasyBot. And I love EasyBot. And there's a video right here about EasyBot. Talk to you soon.